Hi and Assalamualaikum semua. So we meet again in the fourth video. Okay, so in this video I will talk about chapter 4, which is information security policy. So let's get started. Okay, so this is the chapter outlines for chapter 4. First is enterprise information security policy, and then issue specific security policy, system specific policy, and lastly guidelines for specific policy development. Why policy? Policy is the essential foundation of an effective information security program. Without policy, it is very difficult to enforce an effective information security program. So the success of an information resources protection program depends on the policy generated and on the attitude of management towards securing information on automated system. That is why it is very important to develop a good policy in order to be followed by all the people in organization. A quality information security programs begins and ends with policy. Some basic rules must be followed when shaping a policy. First, policy should never conflict with law. Policy must be able to stand up in court if challenged, and policy must be properly supported and administered. Okay, figure 4-1 shows a spheres of security in terms of information. The right side of the spheres shows that people within the organization, especially employees, unfortunately have much less restricted access to many forms of information, especially when it is in physical form. This means that for internal personnel, especially employees, the organization must make a much more concerted effort to properly prepare for and regulate employee action. Because why? People are the most easiest person to access into the information. The following guidelines can help in the formulation of IT policy as well as InfoSec policy. First, all policies must contribute to the success of the organization. Management must ensure the adequate sharing of responsibility for proper use of information system. Support system is very important. And users of information system should be involved in this step of policy formulation. Okay, this is a bullseye model. It is an implementation model that emphasizes on the role of policy in an InfoSec program. Because it provides a proven mechanism for prioritizing complex changes, the bullseye model has become widely accepted among InfoSec professionals as a guidance in order for them to create a good policy of InfoSec. Bullseye model layers have 4 layers, which is policies, which is the first layer of defense, network, threats, first meet the organization's network, systems, computer and manufacturing systems, and lastly application, which all the application in the systems. In order to produce a complete information security policy, management must define 3 types of information security policy, which is Enterprise Information Security Program Policy, EISP, Issue Specific Information Security Policies, ISSP, and Systems Specific Policies, SysSP. The first one is EISP, Enterprise Information Security Policy. This is a high-level information security policy that sets the strategic direction, scope, and tone for all of an organization's security efforts. The element of EISP includes maintenance of InfoSec policy and practices and responsibility of an user. EISP also guides the development, implementation, and management requirements of InfoSec program, which must be met by InfoSec management and other specific security functions. In order to integrate an organization's mission and objectives into the EISP should not contradict the organizational mission statement. Other EISP elements is an overview of the corporate philosophy on the security, information on the structure of the InfoSec organization and individuals who fulfill the InfoSec role, fully articulated responsibility for security that are shared by all members of the organizations, and also fully articulated responsibility for security that are unique to each role within the organization. This is the components of EISP, which include purpose, elements, need, roles and responsibilities, and also reference. In other words, when you want to create an EISP, you need to have these components so that you will fully cover all the important information and elements for that particular information security. Next is issue-specific security policy. This policy is much more detailed compared to EISP. It is an organizational policy that provides detailed, targeted guidance to instruct all members of the organization in the use of a resource such as one of its processes or technologies. ISSPs are also referred to as fair and responsible use policies, and the purpose is not to establish a foundation for administrative enforcement or legal prosecution, but rather to provide a common understanding of the purpose for which an employee can and cannot use the resources. An effective ISSP must accomplish the following. First, it articulates the organization's expectation about how its technology-based system should be used. It documents how the technology-based system is controlled and identifies the processes and authorities that provide this control. It indemnifies the organization against liability for an employee's inappropriate or illegal use of the system. And every organization ISSP should include address-specific technology-based systems, require frequent updates, contain a statement of the organization's position on an issue. This is basically the example of ISSP topics. It can be the use of electronic mail, IM, and other communication apps. It can be the policy of using the internet, the web, and company network by company. It can be the policy on malware protection requirements and so forth. The elements of ISSP, first is statement of purpose, authorized access and usage of equipment, prohibited usage of equipment, system management, violations of policy, policy review and modification, and lastly, limitations of liability. In implementing an ISSP, common approach are creating a number of independent ISSP documents, each tailored to a specific issue. Create a single comprehensive ISSP document that covers all issues. Create a modular ISSP document that unifies policy creation and administration while maintaining each specific issue's requirement. Table 4-4 describes the advantages and disadvantages of each approach that discussed previously. It means that a number of independent ISSP document is called individual policy. Single comprehensive ISSP is called comprehensive policy, and modular ISSP document is called modular policy. So each of the approach have different advantages and different disadvantages. Now let's move on to system-specific security policy. SysSP are organizational policy that often function as standards or procedure to be used when configuring or maintaining system. SysSPs can be separated into managerial guidance and technical specifications, or combining in a single unified SysSP document. A managerial guidance SysSP is created by the management to guide the implementation and configuration of technology, as well as to address the behavior of people in the organization in ways that support the security of information. This managerial guidance SysSP applies to any technology that affects the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of information. While technical specification SysSPs shows that system administrators' direction and actions on implementing managerial policy. For example, an ISSP may require that user password be changed quarterly. A systems administrator can implement a technical control within a specific application to enforce this policy. Basically, there are two general methods of implementing such technical control. First is access control list, and another one is configuration rules. For the access control list, it includes the user access list, matrices, and capability tables that govern the rights and privileges. In general, access control lists regulate who can use the system, what authorized users can access, when authorized users can access the system, where authorized users can access the system from, and how authorized users can access the system. So common user privileges, also known as permission, include read, write, execute, and also delete. This is the example of local security policy settings. Figure 4.5 shows how the ACL group security model has been implemented in various operating systems. The top window of this figure lists the group that have been defined on the system shown. Clicking one of the group will show the lower window, which would display the privilege set for each member of that group and allow those privileges to be charged as well. This is also the same concept. Next type of rules is configuration rules. Configuration rules are instructional codes that guide the execution of the system when information is passing through it. Many security systems require specific configuration script telling the system what actions to perform on each set of information they process. Examples include firewalls, intrusion detection and prevention system, and also proxy server. Figure 4-7 show how this security model has been implemented by Palo Alto in a firewall rule set. Combination of SysSP. Many organizations create a single document combining elements of both management guidance and technical specification, SysSP. While this document can be somewhat confusing to the users of the policy, but it is very practical to have the guidance from both perspectives in a single place. Next, let's move on to the last topic, which is guideline for effective policy development and implementation. For policy to be effective and legally defensible, they must be properly developed using industry accepted practices and formally approved by management, distribute using all appropriate methods, read by all employees, understood by all employees, formally agreed to by act or affirmation, and uniformly applied and enforced. Okay, in other words, the policies must acceptable for all the people in organization. In developing information security policy, it is often useful to view policy development as a three-part project. The first part is the policy design and written. The second, a senior manager or executive at the appropriate level and organization's legal counsel review and formally approves the document. The last part is management processes established to perpetuate the policy within the organization. So the first part is an exercise in project management, while the latter two require adherence to good business practices. Policy distribution. How to distribute the policy? It can be distributed either by hard copy or electronic distribution. Another guideline is policy reading. Barriers to employees reading policy can arise from literacy or language issues. It means that sometimes it is very important for the policymaker and the top level management to ensure that all employees understand and able to read the policy easily. Policy comprehension. To be certain that employees understand the policy, the document must be written at a reasonable reading level with minimal technical jargon and management terminology. Figure 4-9 shows the readability statistic rendered by Microsoft Word first sample of text taken from this chapter. It means that this is the result of readability for Whitman textbook. Flash reading ease shows that 28.6 means that this chapter have a high difficulty of readability. For the most corporate documents, a score of 60 to 70 is preferred. Flash king side grade level, it shows 13.9. It means that 13.9 shows that it is too high for organizational policy intended for a broad audience. It means that it is quite difficult to understand. For most corporate document, a score of 7.0 to 8.0 is preferred. Okay, next is policy compliance. Policy must be agreed by act or affirmation. It seems clear that failure to agree to a policy is much the same as refusing to work, and thus may be grounds for termination. It means that employee working at the organization, whether they want or they don't want, they need to agree with the policy. This is the example of a license agreement. For example, if you are not agree with the policy, you cannot use the software. Next is policy enforcement. The final component of the design and implementation of effective policy is a uniform and impartial enforcement. It means that kita dah buat the policy, kita dah develop policy based on templates and process. The last part is to make sure that policy is carefully enforced and people will follow that policy. As in law enforcement, policy enforcement must be able to withstand external scrutiny. Next is policy development and implementation using the SDLC. Like any major project, a policy development or redevelopment project should be well planned, properly funded, and aggressively managed to ensure that it is completed on time and within budget. So one way to accomplish this goal is by using a system development life cycle. So in system development life cycle, they have 5 phases, which is investigation phase, analysis phase, design phase, implementation phase, and lastly, maintenance phase. Next is software support for policy administration. The need for effective policy management has led to the emergence of a class of software tools that supports policy development, implementation, and also maintenance. So the good thing of this software, it helps the policymaker to create a good policy, and it can help them to create a policy much more easy and faster. Figure 411, the software integrates the content from the Popular Information Security Policy Made Easy book, allowing seamless and explicitly permitted integration of existing policy components and even sample policies into the organization's portfolio. Once developed, the policy can be approved by management and then published for users to review. The organization can then add links to its training material and create and administer compliance quizzes. All material is electronic, meaning there is no need for hard copy documents because the site is hosted on the web and not a company's intranet, meaning to say that when you go outside of the organization, also you can access this policy. Other approaches to InfoSec policy development is Informative Security Policy Made Easy approach, and also SP 818 Ref 1 Guide for Developing Security Plans for Federal Information System. Policy Administrator or Policy Maker. This person is a mid-level staff member who is responsible for the creation, revision, distribution, and storage of the policy. In changing environment, policies can retain their effectiveness only if they are periodically reviewed for currency and accuracy and modified to keep them updated. The best is you need to review the policy at least annually, every year. Review procedure and practices. Individuals can easily make a recommendation for revision to the policies and other related documents. So the policymaker or the policy administrator need to aware of this recommendation and make sure that all comments has been examined and management approved changes should be implemented. Policy and revision date. In some organizations, policies are drafted and published without a date, leaving users of the policy unaware of its age or status. This practice can create problems, including legal ones, if employees are complying with an out-of-date policy. Ada certain policy yang mungkin tidak sesuai dengan keadaan ekonomi, keadaan teknologi contohnya, ataupun dah obsolete. So that's why they need to always review the policy supaya they will be keep updated. A final note on policy. Policy development is meant to improve employee productivity and prevent potentially embarrassing situations. There are 3 general causes of unethical and illegal behavior, such as an employee failing to follow policy because of ignorance, accident, and intent. So whatever the cause of illegal, immoral, or unethical behavior, one thing is certain: information security personnel must do everything in their power to deter these acts and to use policy, education and training, and technology to protect information and systems. Laws, policy, and their associated penalties only provide deterrence if 3 conditions are present. First, fear of penalty, probability of being apprehended, and also probability of penalty being applied. Knowing what is prohibited, what the penalties are, and how penalties will be enforced is a preventive measure that should free employees to focus on the business at hand. So that's the end of chapter 4. Thank you so much for watching, and I see you guys on the next chapter. Bye and stay safe.